No one bad weather event can be definitively linked to climate change, not even one bad year. But as the events and the years add up, any doubts about global warming are being eradicated like the tinder-dry brush in a California wildfire. This year's wildfires were the most destructive ever in California. Scores of people were killed as instant infernos leveled entire communities. Those who watched it don't need convincing that the weather and the climate are both changing.
This is not the new normal, this is the new abnormal. And this new abnormal will continue.
On the other side of the continent, a heat wave in Quebec killed several dozen people this year. Next door in New Brunswick, the worst flooding in recent memory. There were wildfires in Ontario and more in the West. And that's just this country. There were wildfires in Portugal and many parts of Europe. An unprecedented heat wave in London, the massive typhoon in the Philippines, all fit with climate predictions that more extreme weather patterns would come with global warming.
We're seeing climate change unfolding. We're seeing actually predictions that have been made some decades ago turning into reality.
We frequently use this virtual space to try to understand what's happening in our world, and in the case of disasters and climate, what's happening to our world. Every year there are extreme events all over the planet. But this year, with more frequency it seems, for every extreme weather event, there was a new and increasingly dire scientific report on climate. For example, in August, we reported a potential climate tipping point of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. In September, warmer oceans created bigger hurricanes that can dump more water. In October, the UN report that we have just 12 years to stop temperatures from rising more than 1.5 degrees. Last month, a report that carbon dioxide is at levels not seen in 3 million years. And in Poland this month, almost 200 countries were told the progress we're making is too slow.
We're getting to a point where each and every country is starting to see the impacts of climate change.
They believe in it here. What looks like paradise is a climate disaster unfolding and unseen, unless you live in the Maldives, where rising sea levels are eroding shorelines. It's happening in low-lying coastal areas around the world.
We've got to start thinking about relocating people who live in places that are just highly, highly vulnerable.
Small island nations are bearing witness to a global disaster in slow motion.
We are not going to become the first victims of the climate crisis. Instead, we are going to do everything in our power to keep our heads above the water.
The more dramatic disasters, often written off as just the weather, are nowadays buttressed by climate science. The California wildfires, worse because the hot season is now longer and drier. North Carolina's hurricane deluge, worse because increasingly warmer air holds more water. Even the frigid polar vortex is explained by a warmer planet that weakens the jet stream, allowing polar air to move south. And the science suggests global warming and the severe events we see are caused at least in part by humans continuing to pump carbon dioxide into the atmosphere.
Global warming is happening, and the amount of people who are understanding that it's human-caused is also increasing, particularly in countries that had a large level of denial previously, like Canada, USA, Australia.
And yet, the forecast is that CO2 emissions will come in higher again for 2018. Rather than turning down the heat, the Earth is on track to warm 3 to 5 degrees this century, according to the World Meteorological Organization. So, when it comes to future climate-related weather disasters, it's possible we ain't seen nothing yet.